Week 10 is here, and so are we. Welcome, everybody, back to the DFS Dudes, episode 10 for week 10. The podcast where we're giving you all of our DFS advice. We are your host, Sam Corcoran, in a bit of a different setup, speaking a different bit quietly. It's a communal space, but that doesn't matter. Jake Hart over there, Julian Sherman down below. Guys, how are we doing? Big week last week. Oh, boy.
Yeah, huge. I mean, I
I
had
think all the money that we lost throughout the year, we just made it back last week.
oh, for sure. And more
Easily.
so. Like
Yeah.
I had Mixon and Justin Fields everywhere, and that just absolutely smashed. And especially combining that with Tyreek coming back and the other running backs also hitting and Eckler and ETN, I think there was just like it was such a chalky week. And you really, if you didn't have Mixon and that crazy chalk, you weren't doing great.
Yeah, you needed Mixon to succeed, and we told you to get Mixon, and guess what? If you guys had Mixon, if you guys listened to us, you were in the plus last week. It's that simple.
You don't really kind of just – it's one of those weeks where you either have Mixon or you lose. If you don't have Mixon, you're just not going to make – like maybe one line at min cashes, but you just kind of have – if a guy has 55 points and he's chalk, it's like we kind of got to have him. And I didn't do super well because I was about to switch out Mac Jones for Justin Fields, and I was like, yeah, fuck nah. And so that really pissed me off. But I targeted the Cincinnati passing game to like leverage off the chalk of Joe Mixon, which obviously did not work. So I made about like $1 this week, but hopefully next week will be better.
There you go. We'll take that. And this week, let's just jump right into it. I think looking at this week, I think there's some solid game stacks that you can do if you want to go that way. That's what we did last week with that Raiders-Jaguars game. It worked out pretty well. I know sometimes Jake had Fields. I apologize, Jake, for saying that Trevor Lawrence was the better pick because Fields did smash last week. So anyways, going into this week, there's a lot of games that I'm excited about, guys. And I don't know about you. Do you guys agree with that?
I think this, looking at the prices this week, and I did a pretty deep dive last night when the prices came out, and this might be the worst slate I've seen this year. DraftKings seemingly hedged hard, especially on running backs. Like you saw AJ Dillon, because Aaron Jones is a little questionable, he's priced way up. Khalil Herbert priced way up. And then you're talking about like quarterbacks like Justin Fields would have been a value, but he's at 6.5 now. Like they seemingly had their prices catch up with how they've been performing. And so making lineups has been tough. I got to get real stingy. And if you try and go up and get like a Travis Kelce or a Patty Mahomes or any of that kind of the higher price guys, you're going to have to sacrifice. And I really don't like a lot of guys in the 4K and below range. So I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say, but I was really struggling to find guys I was excited about playing in that low range, which makes it so tough to go up and get the high price guys.
Yeah, I do. I will say, I think looking at this, the high price guys definitely at running back and wide receiver, it could be rough. This is the first week, by the way. Cooper Kupp, not the number one receiver. That is now Tyreek Hill. I just noticed that. That's one thing. Quarterback, though, on the other hand, I think you can go. There are some prices that I do like at quarterback. Minnesota Buffalo, that is going to be a very fun game to watch. A 7-1 Minnesota team, I believe, versus a Buffalo team who's been regarded as one of, if not the best team in the league. Kirk Cousins at 6K could be a very good price for that. You'd have to pay up for a guy like Jefferson at 8,800, for a guy like Diggs at 8,300. If you want Josh Allen or like a running back, Dalvin Cook, 8K. That could be a very expensive game stack. Hawkinson is at 5,300 going into this week, which is it's a solid price for a guy that got a lot of action in his first game, so you never know. I also think the other guy you have to look at, the other game that I'm interested in, Jacksonville KC. Trevor Lawrence at 5,400 seems like a fantastic price for a game that should include a lot of high-scoring offense, in my opinion, especially with KC. I think that game has the chance to have a ton of offensive firepower in that game. New Orleans-Pittsburgh could be another game, a very sneaky game. Jameis Winston, 5,300. Kenny Pickett, 5,100. I think those could be pretty good values right there as well.
Winston starting?
Who?
Is Winston starting?
Oh, yeah, Andy Dalton 5,500. I saw Winston and I was like, New Orleans. Andy Dalton was ahead of him, which doesn't surprise me. I just missed him, but yeah, Andy Dalton at 5,500. That's the guy you're going for, not Jameis Winston. Kenny Pickett at 5,100. So I think those 3 games could see some offense if you want. I think you have to go low at quarterback this week, in my opinion, because at the other positions, there's not many 4K guys. You're going to want to go high at those positions this week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was looking at this slate, I kind of agree with Jake. I think as the season goes on, the pricing does get sharper, right? Weeks 1, 2 through like 5 or 6, honestly, there's not much of a sample size, right? Especially, I mean, week 1, week 2, week 3, those are great weeks. People overreact to those small sample sizes. People really don't know what's happening in week 1. But once you get to week 10, like, there's still only 9 games of sample size, which isn't a lot, but the pricing definitely gets sharper. And so it's harder to find like those real values, like that Michael Pittman week 1 value. You're just not going to find that anymore. And so you really have to just, like Jake said, like take a deep dive in all the different games. And I think that's why like game stacking, so not just focusing on the individual players, but like what are the games that could go off? And I know Sam, you covered a few of them. And so that's why I like talking about like what are the games we can target, and within those games, what are the pieces involved in that game that we want to have some, and is there a game where we don't want to target, but there is someone we like as a one-off or just a skinny stack, kind of like a correlated one guy on each side. And so I'm really excited to really take a look at this slate.
Yeah, at quarterback, I if I'm gonna go high, I'm gonna go Kyler and Mahomes, but they're so tough to get to. Like, if you're looking at that game stack, it like Kyler Murray, for example, you need D-Hop and you probably need Cooper Kupp. And that is just like something that I tried, and it's so hard to access and also be able to get to the running backs that I like. And Mahomes, you need to have Travis Kelce, and like maybe you have ETN on the other side, and it adds up so much, especially in the Jacksonville KC game. I would say I'm fading that a little bit more because Jacksonville and KC, both their wide receiver cores, it could be any guy, any week. Like, I feel like of the wide receivers, Juju and Christian Kirk are a bit ahead, but I mean, you have no idea. It could be MVS, it could be Juju, it could be Hardman, it could be Kadarius Toney now. And then on the other side, it could be Marvin Jones, it could be Zay Jones, it could be Christian Kirk. And I mean, Jamal Agnew had 2 touchdowns 1 week. So it makes it really tough to call your shot on one guy, because you could hit on Zay Jones and he's the guy for Jacksonville. But if you put your money on Mecole Hardman and it ends up being Juju, that lineup's just not what it could be. Looking down, though, I think there are some values. You really have to get excited. You got to pick your guy and just trust it. The 4 that I have, Matthew Stafford getting the other side of that Arizona Rams game, because maybe you can access with that cheaper price. You could get up to a Cooper Kupp and a DeAndre Hopkins. But again, that's pretty limited. Jared Goff at 5.5. I think that game in general is going to be decently high owned just because of that green opposition rank tag on both sides. So getting away from Justin Fields, who's going to be a big play. I think that you could have Goff, and Amon-Ra is pretty priced down. You've got, I mean, those tight ends there was 2 different tight ends who caught touchdowns. Neither of them the one that I like. I'll get into that in a little bit. But and the last 2, Jacoby Brissett at 5.2. When they are losing games, he passes significantly more than when they're winning. And they're playing the Dolphins. I think we saw Cooper and DPJ have good weeks last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess, before the bye against the Bengals. So I think having all 3 of them pretty cheap, and they could easily have a good game. And it gives you a little bit of room to get around to a Tyreek Hill who's priced up high in that game stack. And the last one, say it every week. Who are the Raiders playing? Because Sam Ehlinger this week is a shoe-in for 2 touchdowns and some amount of yardage, just because that is how bad the Raiders offense or Raiders defense is. And again, you said we're not going to get another Michael Pittman week like we did week 1. He's priced at 6.2 right now. I'm not. They're not going to pass as much as with Matt Ryan, but if Jonathan Taylor's out again, I think there's a lot of exciting options, especially in the receiving game there, where Alec Pierce continues to get those deep targets. Michael Pittman is going to be the target hog, and the Raiders defense is Swiss cheese. So Sam Ehlinger is a play at 5K where it might allow you to access the Saquon, the D Hen, some of those running backs that are going to be pretty important looking at that running back slate.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think one of the games that I like a lot, well, not really games, it's just one of the sides. I like that Cleveland-Miami game. I really like Jacoby Brissett this week at only 5,400. I think they're going to be passing a lot, so I don't think Nick Chubb is going to be super involved, and I don't think many people are going to be on like Chubb this week. He doesn't project well against Miami. And so I think what's easy about going with Jacoby Brissett is, one, he's very cheap. And you can pair him with, the obvious pair is Amari Cooper. I think you would pair him with Cooper. And you also pair him with David Njoku because its tight end spot is just, it's disgusting. Yeah. And so for me, if I have a quarterback and there even is a tight end that, yeah, he could throw to him, I want to go to that tight end, whether that's Cole Kmet or David Njoku, right? Those are two good examples. And so for me, if you're going to go tight end, it's kind of just a punt unless you're going with a guy like Travis Kelce. That's about it, right? That's the guy. And even George, he's not on this slate right now, but even if there was George Kittle, he's risky. So it's really just like, can one of these tight ends get into the end zone, right? Because you're looking at Njoku, it's like, that's such a great way to pair a quarterback. And so Jacoby Brissett targeting that side of the game, because I think Tua might be a little chalky because coming off a massive game, Tua is just a great play in general. If I'm going to pay up, I do like Patrick Mahomes this week going against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's defense it's not great, and I think that the offense of Jacksonville is actually pretty solid, so I think they could keep it relatively tight. I mean, you saw how many attempts Patrick Mahomes had last week. It was crazy, and I think you compare him with the thing you talk about, it's hard to pair him with someone, but that's also part of the great thing about tournaments is that you just choose someone to pair him with, and hopefully they get in the end zone and you kind of embrace the variance. Oh, someone else is on Juju a lot. Well, are we even sure Juju's going to keep on getting these targets? Why can't it be MVS, or why can't Kadarius Toney do it? And we really don't know, which is so great, right? We don't know. And so you can't pair him with Travis Kelce. That's the obvious pair, and I think it is hard to get off Kelce when you are on Patrick Mahomes, but I think you can do it. And I like Sam Ehlinger. He's cheap. You can pair him easily. But that side, Derek Carr on that side of the Indianapolis game is also someone that I think you can play and pair him with Devontae Adams. Bring it back with Michael Pittman or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're kind of going all over the place with all these games. I'm trying to think. There's not many. It's really just game stacks this week. That's what I've really been focusing on. There's not many like specific players that I would pick from one game where I think, okay, I'm going to bet on this guy to hit. I'm really just keying in on these game stacks, hoping that someone will hit. I'm trying to think of some low end guys from some of these games that we mentioned. I think obviously you mentioned the Jacksonville Kansas City game. I think if you want to go with that game stack, you can go with a low end guy, someone like McCole Hardman, someone like MVS, someone like Zay Jones, some guys we talked about all week, even Marvin Jones. Just those receivers can work out real well for you, in my opinion. I think also you look at other games, like you could pick a receiver from New Orleans, maybe Olave if I could find where he's at.
He's 6,800 against Pittsburgh.
Olave is 6,800. Okay, never mind then. Yeah. I was thinking it would be more low than that. So maybe like if you want a guy from Pittsburgh, maybe a George Pickens at 5K. Someone in that range, Deontay Johnson, 5,800 too. If that's going to be a high offensive game, he's going to get a lot of targets. So just a lot of low end guys. Julian, so you mentioned that. So tight end, you think Kelsey's the only real option there this week?
No, not the only real option. I'm just saying that a lot of these tight ends are just kind of punt besides Travis Kelce. I'm not punt, but I mean, there's Kelce. You know what he's going to get. He's the number one receiver on that team. But everyone else, I mean, T.J. Hawkinson, who knows? Zach Ertz, Darren Waller.
I think Hawkinson could be really good this week if you go with a game stack for Minnesota and Buffalo.
T.J. Hawkinson, I guarantee, is going to be 15 to 20% owned. You don't just stumble into a 9 or 10 catch week as a tight end and not pick up that much ownership, which kind of scares me away just because I don't necessarily trust his involvement in an offense with so many good weapons and so many good receivers.
Yeah, but it's a sample size of one game. So like if you're gonna look, he had 9 receptions, so he must get 9 receptions. It's who knows what's gonna happen is the thing with tight end. It's like, do I really want to play TJ Hawkinson if I'm not playing Kirk Cousins? Not really. Like if Hawkinson gets there, obviously he could get into the end zone or something, but that's why if I have a quarterback, I want to put a tight end in there, or else I'm just gonna punt with a lower owned guy or lower price guy. So you can do Hawkinson, but if Hawkinson is chalk, I'm just not gonna play him unless I'm playing Kirk Cousins. It just doesn't make sense because it's one game sample size. You're really just betting on him getting in the end zone because if he does get 100 yards, right, then Cousins probably gets there. So you probably should have Cousins.
I mean, seems like a natural transition just to go straight to tight ends.
We've been all over the place so far with all these stuff. So I think a bit of a different episode structure for those watching. Usually we go in order: quarterback, running back, receiver. But this is a bit of a different week. We've kind of noticed where it's just a big game stack week. So we're kind of just going all over the place with some guys that you can pick up, and we're on tight end right now. So
yeah, I mean, I think really the guys that I want to play, and like Julian said, typically I will. Maybe we weren't on air for this, but typically I'll stack the tight end, especially if it's a cheap tight end, with whatever quarterback I'm playing or as part of the game stack. I didn't last week with Cole Kmet, and it was one of my bigger regrets of that week. But the guys I'm looking at this week, again, you can play whatever tight end your quarterback is starting, but if you're going to single it out, Dalton Schultz at 3.8, I think he is just way underpriced. He is. If you watch Dallas's offense, he is the second option. As much as you want to say Michael Gallup it's Dalton Schultz. So he's even if you're running out of money, flex option if you want to run a double tight end, if you're trying to get up to maybe Kelsey or something. Greg Dulcich at 3.4 has been pretty consistently a part of that offense, which I know that offense is disgusting. But if he gets into the end zone at tight end, that's all you're looking for. And then if I'm really getting low, the guy I do like a lot is Brock Wright. He's the starter for Detroit. And you saw the other 2 tight ends who were active get touchdowns last week. But Wright had 50 snaps compared to the other 2 who had, I think it was 19 and 13. So he's on the field. And in a high-scoring Detroit-Chicago game, he's the guy I want. He's 2.7, not going to be high-owned at all. I think you're talking 1% or less. So I think he's going to be in a lot of my lineups randomly to let me access other players. And if he gets into the end zone or if he gets 4 or 5 catches, that's just a bonus. But it's almost one of those things where you can eat a 0 at 2.7 and be okay in the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, I think for tight end, that's the thing. It's finding someone that has high touchdown equity, right? So an offense that moves the ball. And I think Detroit is an offense that moves the ball. And so I think Brock Wright's going to be higher owned than you think. I don't think he's going to be double digits or anything like that. But in the middle, I think he's going to be upwards of 4.5 to 5%.
The only reason I say that is because they have 3 tight ends all priced at 2,700.
But I think Brock Wright really is the guy that people would go to. And I think tight end, like I said, it's just I don't even like Kelsey that much. He's just priced up so much.
He's just jacked. They jacked him up for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. He's 7.8K, and then the next guy is 5.3K. It's crazy. So one of the guys I like Robert Tonyan this week going against Dallas. I like that game in general. I think Rodgers didn't perform well, but a lot of those were kind of just fluky. He easily could have had 3 touchdowns, bounced off a helmet a couple of times in the red zone. They were moving the ball relatively well, and so I think you can still target Robert Tonyan without having to go with Aaron Rodgers and just punt. Hopefully, he could easily get 5-6 targets, get into the end zone. I already said this, but David Njoku is a guy that I like a lot this week, and I think He's going to be in a lot of my lineups because I am going to have a lot of Brissett. And Tyler Higbee coming off a couple poor games, they really priced him down, but I still think he's a solid play. I mean, it's tough because when you look at the game log, you're like, ugh, he just hasn't done anything lately. But it's also when a guy puts up 0, it's hard to actually like him the next week. But at 3,600, he could turn it around. I mean, he's had like 12 target games, so who's to say that he can't get 9 receptions? He easily could do that right now. And so I think that those are probably the top 3 guys I'm targeting. And I'm not going to pay up for Travis Kelce most likely. It's just a little too expensive unless they have Patrick Mahomes. Or I'm targeting the other side of that game, which is like I'm targeting Trevor Lawrence with Zay Jones, and then I bring it back with Travis Kelce.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's lots of options at tight end. What about the other receiving position, wide receivers? I think looking at those guys, I think this is where I would go high if I'm going to game stack. If I'm going with this Buffalo Minnesota game, get Jefferson, get Diggs. If I'm going with a game stack such as the New Orleans Pittsburgh game, Olave, you could go Deontay Johnson, or then you can go Jacksonville Casey, a bit on the cheaper end with that, with Juju, Christian Kirk. Again, we talked about how you never know. But I think it's best this week to go high at either receiver or running back. I think you can keep it low at tight end. I think you keep it low at quarterback and go with a high-end wide receiver or running back this week. That's just my thoughts right there.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is I'm not in love with any of the top receiving options. Like I'm not looking at any of them and thinking that's the guy you need to have. Especially if you're not playing the game stack, I think you almost can't have them just with how we've talked about how stingy the prices are this week. I think if you're looking higher and like not in a game stack, the guys that I would like, I mean, Jalen Waddle can randomly go off as we saw in the first half of the game against the Ravens was the one where he had like 10 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And if you just twist that a little differently and that second half goes a little differently, he ends up with an absolutely monster game. But as you know, Tyreek Hill caught up a bit in that game in terms of scoring. The other guy, St. Brown, I really like him this week. I'm going to have him almost everywhere just because he is priced up with some other guys that are pretty attractive, and he hasn't been playing particularly well, but the targets are still there, and the offense now going from, I mean, you played Dallas, Miami, Green Bay, who are tougher defenses, and now you get to go up against Chicago. I think it should open up the offense a little bit. And then as far as like single stacks, before I get into the like cheap guys, Amari Cooper, I think he's just
your guy, Amari Cooper.
I hate Amari Cooper, but he's so important to this offense. And in a game, like Julian said over and over again, you like Njoku, you like Brissett. I think at 6.5 to get the wide receiver one, who it seems like every other week is putting up 8 to 10 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. I think that's pretty attractive to me and hard to get away from. He's gonna be pretty chalky in my opinion, but I think it might be one of those plays where you just have to eat it on some of them and try and get away at another spot. And then looking at the bottom, there's not a lot that I like. I think if you want a sneaky play, George Pickens at 5, Jerry Jeudy at 5.7, Rondale Moore at 5.2. But, I mean, once you get below that, it's pretty much only guys that I would play in a game stack. Maybe shoot for the stars with an Alec Pierce at 4.1. He gets those deep targets. Maybe he catches one. But without Ellinger, I really don't see myself doing a whole lot of that. I already talked about Pittman at 6.2, but I'm not as excited about the wide receivers as I have been in the past. And I get really nervous when I start searching that bargain bin for receivers. There's not a whole lot to look at this week.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of the stuff you just said. For me, if I'm thinking like, all right, start with people that I'm going to pay up for, I'm okay paying up for Hill and Cup. I think those are 2 fine plays. I'm not trying to pay up for Jefferson. If I'm going to pay up, I don't want Jefferson. I'd rather have Hill or Cup.
It would have to be a game stack for me. I completely agree with you, I think.
Yeah, I would just it's just not where I'd want to go because Hill and Cup are like those are guys like I I just like Miami a little bit. I like the Miami Cleveland game in general, and I'd rather if I'm gonna go with a bring back, which I probably am, I'll probably go with Tyreek over Waddle. Don't really like Waddle at his price. Tyreek's more explosive, even though Waddle is pretty darn explosive. And so those are really. I'm looking at the top two guys. I also like Diggs 8,300 going against Minnesota. I think that's a great play. Hopkins. But I'm just they go down to Jalen Waddle. There's just no way I want to pay up for Jalen Waddle. And if we're gonna look at guys like price down, I think I like Denver. Both the receivers, 56 and 5,700, going against Tennessee. I think those are fine. I think you can play Russell Wilson with those two wide receivers. Honestly, I know I don't like playing people against Tennessee because they're so freaking slow and they just run the ball with Derrick Henry like 80 times, and you get and their possessions are like 7-8 minutes when they score a touchdown. But those are players that at their price I'm okay playing. Zay Jones going against Kansas City, 4,400. If I'm going Trevor Lawrence, I think that's a guy that I could really pair with him. And I think they are going to be passing the ball a lot. You could go Lawrence, Etienne, and Zay Jones, considering how much work Etienne gets in the passing game. And for me, if I'm also looking down, I think Wandell Robinson at 4,700 for the Giants is a fine play going against Houston. I like that matchup. I think honestly, you could play Davis Mills on the others. Like you could play Davis Mills with some stack. He's fine, and then bring it back with Wandell Robinson. And so for those are really the. It's hard when you look down at like the 4Ks, like are there really wide receivers I want to play down there? Not really. That's why I like not. I just can't pay up for Mahomes and Kelsey because then it's just you're really punching a wide receiver a lot of the time. And so for me, those are really the only few guys that I'm paying down. And obviously, there are mid-range wide receivers that are fine. Like Amon Ra's solid, even though he's 6,900. And I think Christian Kirk is fine. Amari Cooper, Adam Thielen, those guys are solid.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I think there's definitely some solid guys at receiver. Let's come back to that later when we make the consensus lineup. Talk about running back. There are some guys I do like at running back. On the higher end, it's a lot of high end guys at running back. Your top, a lot of these guys are over 6K, so it's a pretty expensive week. I think some guys that you could go after. I think Saquon at 8,600. He's the highest price guy. But going up against a Houston defense, I think they're going to be running the ball a lot that game. So I think he's going to get a ton of leverage. I wouldn't mind paying up for him. Other guys to look at. Josh Jacobs going up against the Colts. It's a whole Josh Jacobs, again, a guy who the Raiders have been using a lot this year. I think that's Julian's guy, obviously, as he's been pitching for Josh Jacobs every week. I can get on board this week with that. I think Josh Jacobs 7,600 is a pretty reasonable price for a team that just fired for a team going against a team that's fired their head coach. Other guys to look at, Tony Pollard against Green Bay could be something to keep an eye on. Zeke could be out again. He was pretty chalky a few weeks ago. Zeke is questionable at the moment. I do like Tony Pollard. I think that could be a very solid option. And then if you look at the low end side, a lot of these guys got bumped up. Where is he's on a bye. Never mind. There's not many guys on the low end side that I have my eye on screaming, oh my God, this has to happen. It's really high end. So I think you could go those two. Nick Chubb, always a good option. It's just really, Travis Etienne, there's a ton of guys just over 7K in that 6K plus range that I do really like this week. That I think running back is the best position for this week, in my opinion. And there's a lot of guys you can go with. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say.
I think if I'm going high end at running back, I am playing Saquon or Derrick Henry. And I have Saquon in almost every lineup just because I think he is such a sure thing in a week where there is so little. I think that the Houston defense is horrible. He is the Giants offense. I think him not getting in the end zone for 2 touchdowns, I think would be a disappointment.
He will be chalky though, I will say. But still.
Yeah, but I mean, as all number 1 running backs are, but I mean, how chalky can he be at 8,600 is what I'll say. Like, he's not going to be over 20%, in my opinion. I mean, not even in my opinion. I don't think he will be. I just, I really don't. Looking down below that, Kamara 7.4 coming off a bad week. He's so vital to that offense. I've decided that I'm just gonna fade ETN at 7.1. He's gonna be so high owned. He is such a likable player on a likable offense. They have a good opposition rank this week. He's coming off a huge week where he was 40% owned. I'm just gonna bet that he doesn't get into the end zone this week and not have him in any of my lineups. And if it comes back to bite me, that's fine. But that's the position I'm taking. Looking lower, there's a few guys. Dameon Pierce at 6.3 is always solid. I didn't like that he didn't have any targets, or he didn't have any catches at least last week, which was a little concerning. But if they somehow get up on the Giants, that would be the solid play. Jamal Williams 5.9. I don't know what Swift is apparently just permanently hurt, and they've decided that's the move. So he could be solid in a game where again, I pretty much like everyone. I even have plays of David Montgomery just because he's going to be low owned. He hasn't done anything the last few weeks, but he continues to get carries. And if he gets in for 2 touchdowns instead of Justin Fields, that's a really solid game for someone at 6K. And then below that, the one play that it's gross, but I'm really excited about it. Najee Harris at 5.5. I really like his week. And it's just because around him is so little. He had 6 catches last week. He's still very involved in the offense. The Saints are not this crazy explosive offense that's going to get the Steelers way down right off the rip. At 5.5, I think he can't miss. I think if he gets into the end zone, that would be huge, and basically make his week. And then the last guy, flyer, Isaiah Pacheco. I kind of just figure if the Chiefs say that he's the starter, at some point you're going to get one of those Chiefs games where they're up 4 touchdowns and they just run the ball. I remember, God, I don't know if I can come up with his name, but I think it was something Gore last year.
Yeah, Derek Gore.
Derek Gore, yeah.
And it seemed like he would always have, at the end of these like weird blowout games, he would have these drives where he would have 12 carries all of a sudden and then get into the end zone. And it would be like, well, he wasn't on the field the entire game. So you're looking at his box score and thinking, wow, he must have been so involved. But it was just Mahomes deciding, okay, I'm not going to pass it anymore. Let's run it with him. And so you're kind of just shooting your shot on Pacheco at 5K, hopefully getting into the end zone instead of CEH or McKinnon.
Yeah, and that's a game stack that I was talking about earlier too, where it's a risky game stack, but if it hits, it's going to hit big because, again, as we've been saying, the Chiefs and Jaguars offense, they have good offenses, but you just don't know who they're going to use. Could it be Pacheco? Could it be CEH? If you can hit on some of those guys, it could really work out for you.
Yeah, I think that Josh Jacobs is going to be probably the chalkiest running back. He's in a great matchup, I think. I mean, they're going to be up going against Sam Ehlinger, and they're just going to run the ball. And we know when it comes to running backs, just about usage, how much usage is he going to get? And he's going to get a lot because I think they're going to be up. They have a new head coach. He's at 7,600, so he's not super priced up, right? He's only the, fifth highest running back price. He's going to be chalk. And so I think he's a great play. That, along with, you mentioned Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara is a really solid play. I think that he still has major usage in that offense. You saw it last game. They were down the entire time, and he still got some nice work. And Pittsburgh, I think they're going to be up this game and using Kamara a lot more. I also think, if Aaron Jones is healthy, you can play him. I think it's fine. He had one bad game. He had a poor game. He was injured. They come out and say his ankle's 100%. That's great, right? If he gets ruled out, the chalk is gonna be not. AJ Dillon's super priced up, but still he'll still be pretty darn chalky. But I think that Aaron Jones, people are just gonna overreact to 1 week. Look at his ankle injury, go, no, I just can't play him. I think you can play Aaron Jones. I think he's a fine play. And obviously, I think that Houston Giants game, both running backs, Dameon Pierce and Saquon Barkley, are both definitely playable. And one of the guys that I was going to talk about, you talked about Najee Harris at 55K. That's just it's something that I can do because he is basically he's not a workhorse anymore. I forget the rookie's name. He's in it a little bit, but at 5,500, you got a running back that's getting double digit, like 15 carries. Like it's about usage. He could easily get into the end zone, get some receptions. He's a solid play, along with another 5,700 running back Melvin Gordon. He's solid. Darrell Henderson in that range. He's solid. So there are guys that you can pay down for, right? Henderson, Gordon, and Harris that are fine plays at running back. You don't see that often. And those are guys that I'm really going to target. And I think those are people that Najee, Gordon, and Henderson are going to be in a lot of my lineups. And it's hard to fade Josh Jacobs. So I'm trying to build around a guy that's going to be like 15, 20% owned and try to leverage that somehow, either by playing the Las Vegas passing game or going to some lower owned players at wide receiver or a punt at tight end, something like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with Najee too. I know I didn't mention him, but I keep mentioning that New Orleans Pittsburgh game as a game that you can possibly target, and there you have it right there. Are you guys ready to move to the consensus lineup, or do you guys have anything else you want to say?
I mean, yeah, outside of that, I think you did mention at wide receiver Deontay Johnson, and I think it's interesting to take a look at him and Pickens. I think without Claypool and you're kind of the Saints defense hasn't been great. So I think that they're worth a shot on maybe a flyer lineup here and there with I mean, you can even play all three of them because they're so cheap in terms of Pickett and Deontay and George Pickens.
Absolutely. Let's do the consensus lineup. Are we going to go with that Pittsburgh New Orleans game stack, or what do you guys want? I feel like I'm pretty flexible with what we do at quarterback. I'll say that right now. So if you guys have someone in mind that you want to target, then feel free to say it. I'm pretty flexible at quarterback for this week.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I think my like favorite lineup has Goff in it, but I think my top three, probably Goff, Brissett, Ellinger. I don't see myself paying up a whole ton.
Yeah, I think we go Brissett to go along with Cooper and Njoku. Those are the two guys. It's because it's so easy. Now you don't have to worry about the tight end spot. You can just put in Njoku. Amari Cooper's going to get his targets. It's cheap enough where, if we want to bring it back with someone on Miami, and if we do want to bring it back, I mean, obviously the chalk bring back would be Tyreek Hill. And so I think I don't want to bring it back. We don't have to do a bring back stack, but if we do, it's easy. We can put in Hill. We can afford it. It's cheap. So I think that's a stack that we could do.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting, especially like if we do that stack, even with Hill, I think we might have enough for like a Jacobs, Najee at running back, or if other people like some other guys.
Even like a Saquon, yeah.
I think that's easy. Why don't you plug that in and see how much we have? I can't.
Yeah, let me do that. So we're talking with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, David Njoku as a tight. Amari Cooper and David Njoku, or just one of the two?
Yeah, do both.
Do both? Okay, perfect. So David Njoku, Amari Cooper is in the he is at 6,500.
Yeah,
so yeah, you have an average salary of 56, like almost 5,700 if we round up. If we go with a high running back, if we go like with a, what were you thinking, like a Najee and a Saquon, or a Najee and a Jacobs?
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. Yeah,
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's all about like how it looks and how it ends up. So just stick it in there for now. And
let's go Saquon just to see the high price. And also I would personally prefer Saquon. I'm willing to go chalky there. Najee, and then what if we add like a Tyreek? Just seeing what we can do. We have 1,900 left. Adding a Tyreek could be kind of rough. Then you have 10K for 3 spots.
Don't you want to bring back stack? Don't you? If let's say Brissett does well and they're passing the ball a lot, wouldn't you think that Miami's also their offense?
Yeah, I think Tyreek is much more important than Saquon, is what I'd say to this.
Okay, you kind of got.
I was just putting Saquon in because I thought he'd be high. So maybe if you could drop a 1K in that, then you could probably go someone like Jacobs then, or even a Kamara, somewhere in that range. I think Jacobs, you guys all seem pretty high on. If you guys are willing to do that, is there another guy you'd rather vouch for?
I mean, Jacobs and Kamara are fine with me.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. I'll go Jacobs. I think Jacobs. I know he's a bit more expensive. That's tough.
I mean, 200.
Yeah, it's 200.
Why don't you just add it and then we'll see if we need.
We'll see what happens. I'm debating in between him and Kamara. I think we can, if we have to cut money, I think that's where we cut it. As for another wide receiver, Jake, you like Amon-Ra. I would be cool with that if that's what everyone wants.
I mean, I love Amon-Ra. I just don't see us being able to get up to 60.
I mean, do we really want to play Amon-Ra as a one-off though? I mean,
yeah, you can't really do that. You'd have to go somewhat cheap, maybe like a
I really like Rondale in that matchup. I think he, as far as one-offs go, I think he's pretty solid. He's been getting, I think he had 10 targets 2 weeks ago and 9 targets this last week, and they're all short yardage. If he gets into the end zone, it's easy 20-point game.
Yeah. Are you guys cool with defense? We can go. We don't have really any Jacksonville KC stocks, so we can put that in, see if that adds up. Would you rather go like Buffalo, Minnesota, or are you guys just cool with whatever defense?
Obviously, defense, this week I've been playing a lot of Colts, a lot of Vikings, some Cardinals.
I'm thinking Vikings or Colts as well.
I think the Colts are just solid because Derek Carr, as we've seen, doesn't have much of a pocket presence. He's gonna take some sacks. The Raiders' O-line is bad. I
will say though, if you go Colts, you need a very cheap wide receiver. An MBS could be good, in my opinion, at 4,100.
I would rather have Alec Pierce, to be honest.
Alec Pierce, okay, I'd cool with that too.
Yeah,
MVS is just, I don't see the ceiling for MVS that I see with Pierce. Like MVS, if he's very involved in the offense, he gets 5 targets, which I think is tough. And again, you have a little like mini game stack with the Colts and the Raiders, so I think that's going to be a game that has some points in it. So I like this lineup.
Yeah, I'm honestly cool with this too. I think we can call this a good consensus lineup for this week. So just to recap, Jacoby Brissett going low at quarterback. We're going with a Browns-Dolphins game stack, the Cleveland at Miami, with Jacoby Brissett, Amari Cooper, Tyreek Hill for the Dolphins, David Njoku again on Cleveland. So expecting Miami to take that lead early. Browns could come back. We'll see what happens with that. Then you got Jacob, mini game stacked with Indy and Las Vegas, Jacobs and Pierce. Colts defense also included in that. So we'll see how that goes. And then a few one-offs, Najee Harris and Rondale Moore. Guys, anything else you want to add to this lineup? You guys all cool with this?
No, I think this is solid. I think this is going to be – it'll be interesting this week. I've never had I always write up a sheet of all the guys that I like, and I've never had one this big because there are just so many mid guys that I'm like, okay, I'll take one share of it, like I'll throw them in the cash. So it's basically the opposite of last week where I was such high conviction in the guys that I was playing. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it should be I'll let you say any final words you have to say before actually.
Yeah, I think for this late, obviously the pricing gets sharper as we go. Like we're at week 10, right? There's a good amount of sample size. You don't really see massive discrepancies, but I really do like the running back position this week more than I like the other positions. And so I think finding a right running back. And so I don't love playing a lot of chalk running back this week. I think I'll play some, but I think there is value at running back. And I think we can leverage off of some of these really chalky plays to other different plays in the running back position. So I'm excited to see what I can do when I build around a solid core of running backs. And so that's why I like, going with a cheap stack like that, like the Brissett stack. It allows you to get different at running back, right? Because you have more money to spend, right? Because I think there are going to be a good amount of chalk running backs that are lower, like Darrell Henderson is going to be pretty chalky. I think Najee, those two guys are really low priced. And so if I can pay up for a running back, afford it, who maybe doesn't project extraordinarily well, but has a high ceiling, is someone that I like doing. And I think that's something I'm still going to have some chalk Jacobs and stuff like that, but I'm really trying to figure that out with the low price stacks that I'm going to have.
Absolutely. Should be an interesting week, as we kept saying. Lots of it's going to be wonky. I think this is a lineup where it's either, I don't think it's going to be, it really could be all over the place. It could be the best lineup ever. It could be terrible. It could be in the middle. I think this is really a week of question marks going in, and for like everyone. I just don't really know where we're going to end up. What? Oh, Jake, you're laughing at that.
I was just, I mean, like, it could be great, it could be horrible, it could be in the middle. Like, those are the three.
It's like,
I think you just got to play it safe this week, in my opinion. I feel like that's a pretty safe lineup right there. Pretty safe game stack to have. So I think that's just kind of what I'm going for this week. And I think I like what we did this week with our lineup. But anyways, that is going to do it for week 10 of the DFS Dudes. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully we can stay in the plus after this week. Jake, you know the final words. Take it away.
Remember, guys, there are many things a man can do at this time, and this is better than those things.
See you guys. Have a great week.